Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, joined today by Ian Doyle in your living room, Ian.
Living room?
I don't know. Your box room.
Living room. Box room.
I don't know. You've never invited me around for tea.
Well, and with that kind of attitude, you never will be.
And the returning Theo Squires. Welcome back, Theo.
Thanks. It's been a strange couple of months from sunning myself in Singapore to just playing Xbox for a few weeks, but raring to go now.
Are you back fully fit?
85%, 90%. I can sit on the bench. Not ready to start just yet.
We need to get some match fitness in you anyway, don't we? Or some podcast fitness. So let's see if we can get through this one. As you can see, we are on StreamYard today. Our producer Ian is having another day off. I don't know how many that is if you count him, but it's a lot. But it means that we can't all sit together in the studio. Theo's through that wall just there, but Ian's at home. That also means we're not live. So if you've got any questions for Monday's pod, we'll be back to normal on Monday. So send them in. You can email me if you want. I've had some through email, and I can always field them that way. So joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. Otherwise, when we go live, you can drop them in the chat or tweet us. Before we start, a big shout out to our sponsors, NordVPN, who help us do what we do. Ian will be travelling to Girona with Nord, won't you, Ian?
Well, I was thinking of taking a plane, but yeah.
You'll be Nording around Girona. Anyway, to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and our link gives you 4 months extra free on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. Ian, you were up at the AXA training ground today for Arne Slot's press conference. It was. It seems to start with the same two questions every week, really, which is injuries and contracts. But what sort of mood was the Liverpool boss in?
He was in a mood that suggested he was expecting the questions over injuries and contracts. Didn't really say much on either that we didn't know already. So that was about it. I mean, to be honest, what was it? 36 hours since we last spoke to him. So he didn't have much new to say. But, that's unfortunately just the way it is sometimes, certainly with the amount of games Liverpool are playing. I know Jurgen Klopp made a bit of a thing of that, didn't he? So what else can I possibly say? But, that's where the onus is on us as journalists to, get him to say something a bit new that people are going to read. And in the end, he did come out with one or two things. Thought he was quite good on Jarell Quansah, basically saying he's been unlucky when he's played this season. He's made 3 starts. One of them he got subbed at half-time. The other one he scored an own goal. And then in the one on Wednesday, he gives one away. He gives 1 goal away and then ends up deflecting another one in and then still has time to be subbed in injury time. So not the best of times for him, but he gave a strong backing to him and also pointed out that Van Dijk and Canate, he's up against 2 defenders who've barely made a mistake this season, which is what you want. And I would imagine, certainly with Canate, is that the reason he's not made a mistake partly because he knows that if he does make one, you've got Quansah and you've got Joe Gomez as well who can come straight in. So that's a good example of the strength in depth. He was asked about playing with no defender. No defence. That would be interesting. Playing with no striker. That recognised number 9 at Brighton again, and he kind of pointed out once again that he said, "Yeah, it worked well, but it worked well because we had 2 forwards on the pitch in Diaz and Gakpo, and I wouldn't really like to play without a number 9 for the most part." But overall, his mood was one as you might expect of somebody who's won 12 or 14 games that's coming in to replace Jurgen Klopp, which was always going to be a difficult job. I'm not saying he's made it look easy because it hasn't been straightforward. And as we've said before, the fixture list has helped, but he still won at United, drew at Arsenal, beat Chelsea, won at Leipzig, won at AC Milan, and won at Brighton as well with the reserve team. I know Brighton had a lot of players missing as well. But these are big results that no matter what season it is, if Liverpool get results like that, you think that's a good result. Certainly, the one at Arsenal where the first half they didn't play particularly well, and we did mention this on the podcast on Monday, but they still came away with a draw, winning at Brighton in a cup game, not easy. Winning at United isn't easy. Winning at AC Milan, Leipzig are now the joint top of the Bundesliga, and they went there and made them look a bit ordinary. So they've managed to keep hold of kind of the aura around the team and the squad, and even though the manager's changed, head coach. It hasn't really affected it that much, but also looking at the training ground itself, speaking to some people there over the last few weeks, is that when Klopp went, everybody was a bit down, but Slot's come in and he's not quite the same character, but he's not far removed and he's very comfortable in his own skin, which you can always say that about Jurgen Klopp. So, and he doesn't feel as though, you see, sometimes in managers, they feel as though they've got a point to prove. Now, everybody's got a point to prove every single time they get up out of bed, because if you haven't, then stay in bed, or why are you even bothering? But I think with him is that he's confident in his abilities, what he can do, and that's rubbed off on everybody else as well around the place. They say that he's very polite and very welcoming, and there's been no sense of, sometimes we've all been in jobs where somebody new takes over, Joe Rimmer, such as you, and the whole thing kind of like just changes. And this didn't happen with Joe, by the way, for those who are listening. It's a very smooth transition with Joe.
I wish I'd brought in a coffee bar like Arne Slot. I have loads of pictures of you and Theo and Gorsey standing over the coffee bar each day.
Well up for that. But the point being is that the transition there has been smooth as well. So if you put everything together, there's been a lot of change, but in many ways it's been exactly the same. And you've got to credit Slot for that. And that's why when you head down to the Axel like we do once, maybe twice a week, it's just good.
Well, Ian, you've pretty much covered every subject that I had written down to talk about in the first question. So,
sorry, we can elaborate on them all.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough comeback for you, Theo, having to find something to talk about now. Let's go back to the original two questions on that. Let's start with injuries, and let's start with Chiesa, Theo. It's funny because he said he's not back till after the international break, but that's only really another sort of 8 or 9 days, isn't it? The international break. So, but it's been a bit difficult start for Federico Chiesa at Liverpool, hasn't it? We got a glimpse of him early doors, but I think, as Dory was just talking about, this run of games Liverpool have had. There was League Cup games in there, obviously Champions League games. We would have hoped to have seen a bit of him, and we'd have hoped that he could have been getting up to speed after missing pre-season. That's not happened. You got any worries about Chiesa? Do you think, I think some of Slot's answers have been quite revealing about him recently. What are your thoughts on his status at the moment?
I don't think it's really a surprise that we've not seen much of him. When you think of his injury past and the fact that you got no pre-season, you got no friendlies, you're going to pick up knocks. You're going to take time to get up to speed and adjust into English football, adjust into a new style at Liverpool. It was going to take time. I think the only thing that makes it a bit more unsettling is we're not 100% sure what the injury is. I think they've been quite private about that. Like if they come out and said, oh, he's done his hamstring, he's going to be out for a couple of months, you can, like they have with Alisson, you can rest easy there. You know what it is. Where if Chiesa is he back today? Is he back today? Is he going to train? But it's just waiting for him to get up to speed and adjust. You might be a bit concerned because he is taking his time. But look at Ryan Gravenberch last year, where granted he didn't quite have the injury record, but he didn't have the pre-season as much with Bayern Munich, hadn't played a lot of football. And now this season, he's the best player in the team. It takes time to settle. It takes time to adjust. And if they keep saying he's this long-term prospect, he is going to get game time. They are going to get something from him. It's just going to take a bit of time to bed in. He probably would have played against Brighton, wouldn't he, in midweek. You'd like to think he'd have maybe started one of the Champions League games so far as well, and you just haven't seen that from him. But if he can get through the international break unscathed, get back to team training when they return, you've got the busy festive period coming up, and he's going to get games there, isn't he? I'd like to see that he can settle in. You will see more from him in a couple of months. But it's been a tough start. It's not been a massive surprise. It always happens with players when they don't get a full pre-season.
To be fair, Dolly, I mean, you've just touched on it there, but to expand on it, he's done brilliant, hasn't he, Slot, to manage these injuries? Because I know there was a lot of talk, and we'll talk about it in a bit, a lot of talk about Arsenal's injury problems at the weekend. Pep Guardiola has been making a lot of noise about Man City's injury problems this week, but Liverpool have, for the last month or so, had to deal with some pretty major injuries. Jota now not available till after the international break. Harvey Elliott would have played a lot of football in this last couple of months. We've seen him. And Slot has dealt with those quite well. Obviously, you talked about them playing a different formation on Wednesday evening and playing a false nine. He's had to think on his feet, hasn't he, Slot, to find the solutions, and he's done them.
Yeah, I mean, the false nine thing, he obviously tried that in the summer as well, didn't he, when he had a lot of players missing, when they were all still coming back from the international tournaments, the Copa America and the Euros. So there was a little bit of that. But I don't think anybody expected to see it in a competitive game. I do think that, they do have options. They'd rather not play without a number 9. Obviously, with Núñez, the interesting thing about him is that he obviously didn't play much for the first few weeks of the season. Then he went off to Uruguay, which they weren't expecting because obviously he'd been banned, and then that got lifted, certainly temporarily. And since then, he's kind of kicked on from that. He played the 3 games, was it against Chelsea, Leipzig, and Arsenal. Arsenal in particular, I thought he did really well, set up a goal. He's not playing in a traditional kind of way that you'd expect Núñez. For example, I think the game against Chelsea last year, he hit the post about 15 times, but he didn't have a shot on target, I don't think, in the 2-1 game the other week. So Slot's finding a way, but he's had to, because that's the same for any manager, isn't it? Is that the interesting thing for me is that certainly with the League Cup, he's not soft, is he? I mean, somebody was saying, I think he got asked in the press conference about, you're taking the competition seriously because you got through to the quarterfinals. And he's like, well, hang on, I've played half a team, basically. I had to give these players minutes because then they're going to come in useful for them later down the line. And of course, the longer they stay in the competition, the more chance they've got of getting minutes, the more chance they've got of being ready to be playing in the other competition. So, yeah, I think he likes the whole thing of 2 players for 2 positions. He said this many times already, but you can't always do that. So if you've got Szoboszlai and Jones who were able to, play in that kind of box midfield, and you have behind them Tyler Morton and Wataru Endo, who, by the way, I thought the pair of them in the end did quite well. I thought Morton in particular did well, and I reckon he's probably persuaded Slot a little bit that he perhaps deserves a little bit more of a chance. But when you've got Gravenberch, Jones, Szoboszlai, McAllister, you've got all those that are ahead of you, it's going to be difficult. And of course, with Tyler, he's a player who can play in a number of positions in midfield, and with Endo, he's one who can play just in the one. So I think we will see them, but yeah, in terms of tactical flexibility, we all know that he prefers to play a 4-2-3-1 Slot. That's the way he's gone this season. But he's not averse to changing it around. But I would be surprised if we ever saw that in a Premier League game.
Just sticking with Morton, Theo. He's got a really silky style, hasn't he, about him, Morton? And that was, he waited over 2 years for a Liverpool start. I know he's been out on loan during that time, but it's still a long time to go. And it would be easy for him to have given up hope, really, on perhaps a first team Liverpool career. But I certainly think he equipped himself well the other night. It was a great finish, but it was a clever ball, wasn't it, for Gakpo to get behind for his opener. And just all round, it's a very good performance. How much do you see him featuring? Do you think he can feature a bit more? Because he convinced me personally he's got the ability. So I know there's some tough people ahead of him, but I feel like they play 2 in that position now. There might be more opportunities for him to play, as opposed to when Klopp was there and they were only playing 1 in that defensive pairing.
Well, potentially he could be the understudy to Gravenberch because he's the one who suits it more. Like, he's good on the ball. He's not as physical, but he's more suited to that sort of dictator as a number 6 than Endo. It's just whether he gets the opportunities. Gravenberch can't play every single game. That's just impossible. We know fixture periods, schedule is going to get even more intense. But then it's who else is available, who can go in there. Do you need McAllister further forward, or do you want him drop back? You've got players on the fringes who, while the games are there, they'll get the occasional League Cup game or Champions League game. They perhaps don't get the Premier League minutes. So it's about grabbing the opportunity when it falls your way to prove that you can do it. And that's what Tyler Morton did midweek. It would have been easy for him the last couple of months to sulk. Like in the summer, we thought he might be going to Bayer Leverkusen, could be playing Champions League football for them, starting a hell of a lot more than he is for Liverpool. But he's got his head down, played a few 21s games, and he's come in and really put in a decent performance. Just got to keep doing that. Like, he's obviously got a good attitude. He fits well into the squad. It's why they decided they could keep him as this squad player after 2 years out on loan. He knows how Liverpool play, even with the slight change of style with the head coach. So we just wait and see. Like, it would be a surprise if they let him go in January because he does have a role there. Whether it's going to be lots of games or just the odd appearance here and there in the Cups, we'll wait and see. But yeah, he certainly did chances no harm there. Like you said, it was a fantastic ball. It was really intelligent from him to set up the goal for Gakpo. Just like that, more comes his way. Like, if you're thinking long term, you'd rather have him as the understudy than Endo, because Endo's obviously wrong side of 30, doesn't quite suit that style. If you want someone who's going to be a long term prospect, you choose the younger midfielder. But if you want the experience to see out a game, the leadership, you go for Endo.
Yeah, to be fair, I thought Endo played quite well as well, and I think he's equipped himself well almost every single time he's come on, Endo, and I know he's played 2 minutes here and 5 minutes there. But I think Slot said himself, didn't he, the other day, that it takes a mentality to do that, and I thought he's done that well. What did you make of the game overall, Doyle? It was a cracking bit of Carabao, wasn't it? I mean, it was exciting. There were goals, no stress. Gakpo looked like he was enjoying himself. It looked like what was the weather like as well? It looks like a lovely evening on the south coast.
It was Brighton, not breezy, to be fair. Although it did get a bit colder than we were expecting. The game at half time, being Ghosty was saying, "What on earth are we going to write about this?" Because literally next to nothing happened. But Gakpo steps up, scores a couple of goals. Get a little bit too excited at the end, obviously, with the mistake from Quanta and then the deflected goal. But Liverpool did enough to win. The turning point was probably right at the beginning when Lamptey went through and Jaros saved. And, Jaros, I've said this before, is that he looks like a goalkeeper. And I think anyone who hasn't seen him play properly saw that on Wednesday night. He's big, he's strong, good with the ball at his feet. I mean, the players were quite happy just to keep him passing it back to him all the time, and he was knocking it here, there, and everywhere. So he's the modern goalkeeper. And as we were already talking about it, wasn't it, on this week on the podcast, is that he makes saves. And you look at that save that he made from Adingra, the header in the second half. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a save quite as spectacular as that, in the sense that it also helps that it hit the post. It's always, when you save onto the post, it always looks better. But we were right in line with that, and you just thought, waiting for it just to go in, and he gets enough of a hand on it, because initially he was going the wrong way, gets enough of a hand on it, gets onto the post, and that was at 1-0. So a couple of minutes later, Gakpo goes down the other end and makes it 2. And Liverpool were always keeping them at arm's length after that. So no real complaints over the game in terms of the performance, especially when you consider the thing we just spoke about, where they didn't have a striker. And funny enough, when they actually made the substitutions in the second half, I think they kind of went, it's like, not saying they were doing this consciously, but subconsciously, Núñez and Salah, they didn't really get involved that much. So if it had been a league game or they'd started, I think it'd be completely different. And I think they kind of were playing within themselves, thinking, well, the job's been done here, which ultimately it was, but it was a bit nearer than you may have thought. I mean, there were 1 or 2 question marks over some performances. I mean, Andy Robertson struggled at Arsenal, got subbed early. So it was a show of faith that they started him and named him captain. I mean, some people may have said, why is he playing? That's a bad thing. But he needed to get out there straight away. But there were some moments where you could tell he's not quite confident enough in what he's meant to be doing, or, where he's meant to be playing. So you saw a little bit of that. But overall, there were really no, even then you could say, Robertson, he won the header for the first goal by being aggressive. I think it was the first goal or the second, one of those 2 goals anyway. I think it was the first one. He won the header at the left back position. It went into Morton, and then he put it over for Gakpo. So he still contributed. He nearly scored himself. So overall, there can't really be any negatives. I know that Quanta came in for a bit of stick on social media, but they're idiots. You know what I mean? It's like it was some things that happened at the end, and it doesn't really mean it. I don't think I think Slot was very keen today just to point out he played overall pretty well, and as I mentioned before, he's up against strong opposition. So otherwise, no one got injured either, so all good.
I think for Quanta, he's probably just a victim of like the standards he set last season was so high, and he played so well and so consistent. And this year, he's facing a different challenge, isn't he? Because like you said earlier, Konate and obviously Van Dijk's not moving, but Konate is playing so well that he's not getting in. And when he does, he's made the odd mistake, but I thought overall he played well the other night, and I think he'd be fine. I think
I'm not worried. I'm not worried about him at all. Not worried about him at all. I just hope that the fans on social media are quite keen to criticize everybody about every single thing. Don't get on his back.
We think how bad Konate was at the end of last season when Quanta got that opportunity to start in the Prem regularly against Van Dijk, and then you see it this season how quickly it changes. Players go through tough spells of form, especially when they're younger. Nothing to worry about with Quanta. When he gets a run of games or picks up his confidence, Slot will be working with him. The fact he's given this big show of faith in the press conference today, nothing to worry about long term.
Only just signed a new contract. It'd be absolutely fine. I think he will continue to grow, and this will probably do him some good. This little period out of the team and coming in, I've no doubt that he'll have to come in at some point during this season and play some games. So, I think he would be fine. The 2 goalkeeper situation, Theo, just going back to that, Jaros. I mean, you can almost imagine a scenario next season where Liverpool have got their two main goalkeepers, Mamardashvili and Jaros, and that Kelleher eventually does get that move. And this is speculation on my part a little bit, but it does make me think that they're planning with Mamardashvili to bring him in next summer, that perhaps they're thinking that Alisson might eventually move to Saudi. I know he's spoken quite openly about that, but you can see Jaros moving up the ranks further, can't you, and moving maybe into the number 2 spot at some point soon.
Well, he probably already would have done if Keller had got his move. Like, you look at some of the keepers they were linked with as the backup. It's like Alex McCarthy, wasn't it, at Southampton, and that's obviously homegrown third choice option. Whereas they were happy with Jaros to do it because they've obviously seen a lot more of him than most supporters, pundits, etc. have. He's gone and had a really good loan move with Sturm Graz, I think one of the League and Cup double. And he comes through the ranks. He plays how Liverpool want their goalkeepers to play. It's a bit harsh on him that he is only the third choice, but it was a surprise that Liverpool still got Kelleher there. So it will be fascinating to see what happens next summer with the goalkeepers. Like with Alisson, I remember John Achterberg, I think, did a podcast in the summer when he was talking about when they signed Mignolet and when Pepe Reina left. And the thinking there was that the wages partly, because Reina was on such big money, that they moved him on to go and get someone else who wouldn't cost as much. It's like, you could see a scenario with that with Alisson, where he's still got a few years left, but he is one of the highest earners. You could just start again with Mamardashvili, or you give Jaros a go, but then maybe there's another loan spell in it for Mamardashvili. Alisson stays for a couple of years. It's just how patient does Jaros want to be. He's a few years younger than Kelleher, so he can be this backup goalkeeper for now. But when he's gone and got a taste for it in Austria, winning trophies, and he's done well when he's come on against Crystal Palace when he started here, it's like, what happens? Like, if Alisson wasn't injured and Kelleher starts against Brighton, Jaros doesn't get that start. He doesn't come on against Crystal Palace. So it's a very difficult role being that third choice keeper. Normally it's a much older goalkeeper, much more experienced, who fills that role. So to be young when you've had that taste of it, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him, how patient he is, how happy he is to stick around.
Did you see someone tweeted Suarez, Neymar and Messi and said like Liverpool's goalkeepers? And it was like them to celebrate, maybe laugh. Going back to the Premier League then, what's the weather like tomorrow? Dory, have you got a forecast for us?
I think it might be Brighton breezy.
Yeah,
it's Brighton again.
Yeah, it's Brighton again. I mean, just going back to Pep Guardiola talking about injuries, Arsenal have obviously had a bit of a cry about their own injuries and a slightly more difficult start than maybe they've had in the last couple of years. It does feel like opportunity could be quietly showing itself for Liverpool, and obviously this is a game they've come through a tricky spell, in quite good state. Liverpool. This is a game that obviously poses a threat for them, but Brighton will come and play. I mean, I was reading the Brighton boss talking before about watching Nottingham Forest beat Liverpool, and he said, yeah, but they're a very different style of play from us. So they're obviously going to come and attack Liverpool. So it's an opportunity for Liverpool. It's an opportunity to go into the international break and really sort of show what they're about in the Premier League and show that they are ready for a title challenge. What do you think, Doyle? You've been impressed with this recent run. What are you looking at for tomorrow's game? Are you confident?
Well, there's another game, isn't there, next week against Villa? So what happens on Saturday?
It's at home though as well, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. To be honest, you can't read anything into the game on Wednesday because the teams will be completely different. The only thing that I read into that is that I think Mitoma and Welbeck are going to start on Saturday because they did pretty well. I think Lamptey may have played himself into the team. I don't know because he made some defensive mistakes and they were pointed out. But he caused Robertson a few problems with his pace. Basically pace. That's what they got. They got a lot of running around. And I think Brighton are a strange team, aren't they? Because I always seem to think that they're doing quite well. And then you look at the table. But where are they now? They did get into
the sixth.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. They've done it. But I was thinking like last season, they ended up finishing 11th or something, which surprised me when I saw that. But they've done well this season. They got the draw at Arsenal, though, down to 10 men. They beat United, although United had a goal disallowed because they tapped it in from a yard out when they could have just left it, and they scored a last-minute goal. So those little things are going for them in the Premier League. It'll be tough for Liverpool, and it will be interesting because they're probably going to be the first team, well, actually the second team, because I think Chelsea did them for the most part. They're going to come and have a go, and I don't think Brighton are as good as Chelsea. I think if Liverpool are going to get any joy, it may be from the fact that they're kind of like a Liverpool light, if that makes sense. It's like they like to play certainly they like to play out from the back. I know they're not the only ones. Chelsea like that, which is why when Chelsea played Brighton the other week, it was 4-2 at half time because loads of the goals were just they kept on getting it wrong, passing it out from the back. So I think Liverpool could get a bit of joy with that if they do the pressing. But the problem for Liverpool will be if any of the wide players or the midfielders get a run on the defence, because that's where they cause problems. Brighton, we've seen Mitoma at Anfield, we've seen him at Brighton. We know Welbeck loves playing against Liverpool. So they've got all of that. And they're good at set pieces as well. But Liverpool have shown themselves to be fairly decent. I know Arsenal scored one, but they very, very, very nearly caught him offside. It was a very good delivery. Liverpool have been good at defending them. So I think Liverpool have more than enough in there to win the game. But it'll be interesting to see if Brighton score first, because then we might find a little bit more about this Liverpool team. Because obviously Forest scored reasonably late on in the game that they won, and Liverpool didn't really have an answer. And I think at the time, Slot said the one thing he didn't like about that game is the reaction in the last 10 or 15 minutes. There was nothing. I think Liverpool have come on from that, and obviously there was other factors going into that game. But yeah, if Liverpool can get the win, what would that be? They've got these 7 difficult games that are meant to be season defining. They've played 4, won 3, drawn 1, got through in one competition, effectively got knocking on the door, getting through in the other one due to the good results at Leipzig. And they've managed to avoid defeat against one of their title rivals and also beat another one. So, yeah, I do think overall they've got to be happy with this. And even if they finish with, say, for example, they win the 2 league games and draw against Leverkusen, they'll be happy with that. I do think that Brighton's probably the one where, of the 3 remaining games, you're thinking they probably could do with winning that, because I would expect. I know I've just said Arsenal drew, but they were down to 10. I'd expect City. I'd expect Villa. I'd expect some of the other teams to beat them at home.
Yeah, agree. I mean, just looking at Brighton's results, then they concede a lot of goals. They're obviously sort of still getting used to a new style under a new manager, so they concede a lot. But they've only lost once this season. They've won 4, drawn 4, and lost 1. And the one they lost was against Chelsea, who was that 2-2 at half time or something like that?
4-2 at half time. Because Cole Palmer
scored
all the goals, didn't he?
No, of course, yeah. But like, they came from 2-0 down, didn't they, to beat Tottenham, and they've been generally quite dangerous. But Theo, I'm always more confident when teams come to Anfield and they want to attack Liverpool, and that's what Brighton will do. They will leave gaps, and I think they might cause problems. But I think Liverpool will much prefer their style than a Nottingham Forest who sit in.
Yeah, they would. The concern with Brighton is they have got a lot of pace there. And as we saw in midweek and last weekend against Andy Robertson, that pace is a bit of a struggle. There is gaps, there is space in behind the Liverpool defence. But Brighton aren't necessarily going to be spraying the ball like the Ben White one for the Arsenal opener. They're a good team, had injuries. They're not winning. They're not the finished article yet. And Liverpool, obviously, are going to be high confidence. They're beating them midweek with a few changes in the team. Those players who've come in, they want to keep the places. And they've got every reason to be confident. I remember a couple of years ago, it was 3-0, wasn't it, at the start of October against Brighton. And in that game, you just knew they'd equalise late on when Trossard got the hat-trick. Liverpool were in a very bad place at the time. They weren't playing well. But now it's completely different, isn't it? Liverpool should have enough. It'll be a tight game. Plenty of chances, and then it comes down to the defence. Of course, defence is on top with Konate back in there, Van Dijk back in there. They should have enough to get the job done. I look at Brighton, and like Danny Welbeck is scoring a lot of goals. There are reports saying that United were even looking at him in the summer, but surely he's a player who that run is not going to keep on going. Like, he's not someone who's going to turn it into a 25-goal season, especially at this stage of his career, and that's probably jinxing him.
Every week I try and change my fantasy team, and I look at him and think the same thing, and then every week he scores. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You never know.
But yeah, we just made sure that he's going to score tomorrow now, haven't we? We'll get like a header off a free kick or something. But even if Brighton do score that goal, I still expect Liverpool to score a couple, get the job done.
Just sticking with you, Theo, quickly. Mitoma, obviously a very good player and always seems to play well against Liverpool. But he's a player. It's so weird when you took your glasses off then, Doyle. It looks like your eyes popped out your head. He's a player that Liverpool have looked at. He's a player that Liverpool could have signed, isn't he?
Yeah, this is from Ian Graham's book. He talks about how they've got a lot of respect for Brighton and Brentford because they look at the data of style as well, looking at other players' stats, and they're teams that have followed Liverpool's model. And while they've signed a lot of players that Liverpool got a lot of time for, they're more players that aren't quite of the standard of Liverpool now. They would have been 2012, 2013, 2014, or they're just not quite fitting the style and how they actually play. But Mitoma is one of the ones where Ian Graham regrets that he didn't push him more as someone who could be a really credible Liverpool target. I suppose you look at the Liverpool squad and they've got a lot of players who can come in off that left wing. Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, Chiesa can do it, Jota can do it, Nunes can do it. So you can see where would a Mitoma fit in. But he has been a real shining light for Brighton in the Premier League over the last couple of years. Liverpool, when they've got players they admire, they keep an eye on them, maybe go back in for him a couple of years down the line. Not sure if Mitoma's age off the top of my head, but presumably he's slightly younger. But still, Liverpool well sorted at that left wing position at the moment. It's not one you massively regret, but it would have been certainly interesting if they had brought him in, like we've seen them go for Minamino, Endo. It is a market they have looked at and got some success from in the past.
He's 27, Mitoma, so he is.
He'd be a bit old for him to go for now. It was like Jared Bowen a few years ago.
Yeah, he's just slightly older because he came to the Premier League quite late. Should we move on to picking our teams, because I think there'll be it's not going to be an easy selection, should we say? So let's start there. Doyle, we'll start with you. I'm guessing Kelleher will come back in goal despite Jaros's performance, but let's just start at left back, because I think that could be an area where there could be a little bit of debate this time around.
Yeah, I think it'll be Tsimikas. I think Robertson's not quite there at the moment. Tsimikas, who overall isn't as good a footballer as Robertson, but is in a decent run of form. He's somebody who prefers to have minutes and regular minutes at that. So, he did okay when he came out on Arsenal. I think he should start. And I think you're looking at that and go, he might stay in the team for Leverkusen.
I'd agree with that. Give us the rest of your back four while you're at it.
The rest of it's fairly straightforward. Trent comes back in. I thought Conor Bradley looked a bit rusty. I know he's only just had a knock, but he was given a bit of a tough time up against Mitoma. And was it a dinger in the first? That's how the second half it was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I do think
facing Mitoma late on in a game isn't easy. Is it?
Yeah, that's true, especially when he's fresh and you've just come back from injury, this, that, and the other. But it'd be hard for Trent, and it goes back to what I was saying a bit earlier on, that when Salah will have to have a bit more appetite for the defensive side of it, I think, up against Mitoma, and the rest of the back four will be Van Dijk and Konate. Some
great quotes, Theo, from of all people, Simon Rimmer, great surname, great chef, talking about Trent. Do you want to just bring listeners up to speed with them, because I thought they were really, really interesting, especially about the defensive side of things.
So it was when Trent reports back for pre-season. Obviously, it's a bit late because they've had the Euros, and Slot's pulled him after one of the training sessions going, "Oh, can you come to my office after it?" And he's there thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get slaughtered here. He's going to tell me that I'm a really bad defender, basically say what everyone's been saying in the summer during the Euros, every pundit going." And then Slot says to him, "I've got some video clips for you to see." And he's thinking it's going to be Anthony Gordon tearing him apart and all this, everything he's going wrong. He's a dreadful footballer. And then it's actually clips from Trent in training. I think he said it was like 50 clips. And it's, you're in a really good position here. You're in a really good position here. Just turn your body 8 degrees to the right, because then you're in a slightly stronger position to make the tackle. Players are going to find it harder to get past you. And he was just blown away by that level of detail there, that you can make that slight tweak and getting all that positivity as well. Because I know when Trent's asked about people thinking he's a bad defender, he shrugs it off. But it must get to you a little bit, especially after the summer when it didn't go his way at the Euros. So we won't see what it means for his future for a while yet, with this obviously stuff in the air. But I think we are seeing the positive signs from it this season, because he has been defending better, hasn't he? He has certainly been harder to get past. And I never thought he was easy to get past anyway. It's just, if Liverpool are a side that leave gaps, it is easy to target those gaps if you've got a player with pace. But he's certainly been one of their informed players, and he seems to be enjoying working with Arne Slot, providing Slot leaves him on the pitch rather than subbing him off 25 minutes early.
Before we carry on picking our team story, just quickly, I mean, it does speak volumes to the players. Everything said from the players, I think, so far this season is about Slot's impact, his style, the things he's asked, just seems to be quite positive. Obviously, you've covered quite a few managerial changes in your time at Liverpool. Just personally, going to the first third of the season, how impressed have you been overall with Slot, his demeanour, his tactics, pretty much the whole package? How does it compare to some of the other managerial changes that you've seen in your time?
Well, I think in the last few weeks, I think we've seen somebody who's a bit more comfortable doing it, which is why he's reacted a bit more on the touchline. I know we like to read into that, but he had the thing against Chelsea, the thing against Arsenal, and there was even a little bit of it on Wednesday night. I just think he's like, well, if you've won 12 or 14 games, if you can't do it then, when can you do it? I think it's gone better than he could have expected. Anyone could have expected, let alone him, In terms of managerial changes, yeah, you can see why Liverpool brought him in, because he's similar to Klopp as a personality. I mean, he's not as charismatic, but then no one is. It's simple as that. But, he's his own person, and I think we've spoken before on the podcast, haven't we, that he just says it as it is. And I think because he's getting a little bit more used to that, us and English football and the stuff he can say. I think he's become a little bit freer in what he's saying, and he's goes as far as say bantering, but he is a little bit of back and forth now and again. Certainly before games, less so after games. But overall, yeah, I think as I was mentioned before about the training ground, the accident. I think people forget that. Yeah, they play the home games at Anfield, but they spend almost all of the time at the training ground. That's basically where their home is, where their office is, as it were. In fact, it technically is where his office is. And that's where you get to the real feeling or what the club is like. And, we've seen many a time at other clubs that, they talk about the mood around the training ground is somber or this, that, and the other, and leaks come out of it. You don't get any of that with Liverpool, as you said. Every single person that talks about it talks about Slot in a positive sense. And in terms of his coaching, obviously we don't get to see that, but he's certainly got a greater attention to detail than possibly Klopp as a person. But then Klopp did surround himself with the brain and all those other people, Drag Kravitz and Linders, and there was a lot
more hands-on, isn't he, Slot?
It's that. I mean, it's probably while the club might say it's just up to it's just semantics, but why is the head coach not a manager? I think they wanted to put across the fact that it's not to do with transfers, it's to do with the fact that he's somebody who wants to be known as a head coach. He's not fussed about the job title either. I mean, it literally makes no difference to us as journalists because he still does the press conferences, this, that, and the other. So I don't think there can be any complaints over him. And as we've mentioned before, let's see what happens when they go on a bad run or they lose some big games, because it will happen at some point. And there's every chance that it could happen, over December with the sheer amount of games that they've got there, and tough away games at that, and a lot of away games that are nowhere near my house, by the way. So we'll see. But so far, he couldn't have asked for any more, and Liverpool couldn't have asked any more from him. Sorry.
Thanks. Let's go back to back four. Theo, you never actually did give us your back four. So
but yeah, I agree with Doyley's Tsimikas and then the rest of the first choice. I think it was interesting in the press conference when Slot pointed out that Robertson didn't have a pre-season, and we know he had a lot of injuries last year. So maybe we are being a bit harsh on him, saying, he looks like he's done now. A lot of football's caught up with him. It's going to take time for him to find form. We'll just wait and see if he can get back into it. It makes sense to take him up the firing line now, because he had a difficult night against Arsenal. He struggled at times against Lamptey's pace. And like Doyley said, Tsimikas is playing well. The other three pick themselves.
Yeah, I agree with Tsimikas. I think he'd go in mine as well. It's one of them with Robertson again. I think sometimes at Liverpool, when things are going well, it's just a lack of things to talk about that sometimes amplifies someone's form. And I don't think Robertson's been that bad. He got turned by Saka at Arsenal. He won't be the first. He won't be the last to be turned by Saka. So I think, has he looked a bit rusty at times? Perhaps, but I wouldn't read too much into it. But
with Robertson, I think his contract's up not next year after. So 18 months to go. If it wasn't for Trent, Van Dijk and Salah, that would be the talking point, wouldn't it? Whether he gets a new contract, especially when he's not 100% at his best. So we'll wait and see. Like, he's wrong side of 30. He could be the next emotional farewell.
Well, certainly Tsimikas has played well this season when he's come in, and I think he would deserve his place. Sticking with you, Theo, give us your midfield. I suppose there's one big decision to be made in there.
Szoboszlai back in as that is from the Premier League game, isn't it? He's the number 10. Gravenberch number 6. McAllister against his former club. It's a bit harsh on Curtis Jones because I think he's doing well. He's probably been in better form than McAllister last couple of games, but McAllister, regardless, is normally one of your first names on the team sheet.
Gravenberch,
McAllister, Szoboszlai.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. with both of you. It's funny because I feel harsh on Jones, but I think he played a bit better, deeper, when he moved deeper against Arsenal. And Szoboszlai, I think I've said loads of times on this pod, even when I don't necessarily think he's been that easy on the eye with some of his football this season, his work rate just sets a tone that I think is really important for Liverpool. So that would be my midfield. Doyle, going back to you for your forward line, another big decision to be made in there.
Salah, Nunez, and Gakpo.
Yeah,
Diaz can come off the bench and run at them second half.
Yeah, agreed. I think if you're not playing Gakpo now, be pretty harsh after a really good display in midweek. Theo, would you go along with that?
Yeah, I think so. I was a bit irritated on the commentary midweek when they keep going how Cody Gakpo loves the League Cup. It's because he's the one who's always rotated in. Like if you put him in the Premier League games, he scores in the Premier League games. He is just that sort of player. Give him a few games, he finds form, he gets the goals. So having got a couple in midweek, hopefully we'll see his first Premier League goal of the season against Brighton. But yeah, you've got to reward that sort of performance. And then Diaz can torment Leverkusen hopefully on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because Nunez has scored one Premier League goal. Gakpo hasn't scored a Premier League goal. Obviously, Diaz, Salah, and Jota had done pretty well, but those two have contributed a great deal this season already, despite not really scoring that many goals, certainly in the league. So, no problems with both of them in tomorrow. Doyle, give us a score prediction.
I reckon it will be 2-1 to Liverpool Football Club.
Theo?
Yeah, same. 2-1.
I'm going to go 3-1. I think Brighton can see the few. And we'll be back on Monday to look back at the Brighton game and look forward to a big return. Xabi Alonso back at Anfield on the touchline for Bayer Leverkusen. Really, really great Champions League night on Tuesday evening. So, we will see you then. We'll be back as normal live from the Echo offices on Monday. So, reminder again, if you want to put a question in, ping us an email, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com, or give us a tweet at joerimmer88, Ian Doyle Sport, Theo Squires Echo. We're all around and we'll make a note of your questions. So please get in touch. Thank you all for your support. And we'll be back on Monday to talk Brighton and Leverkusen. See you then. It's all right.